Hi everyone, Freaky Boy here. This is a series on learning the tarot that rather than saying, here's a card, here's its meaning, memorize it, here's a card, here's its meaning, memorize it, we look at the bigger pictures that the story tells and infer the card's meanings from those to see the whys behind the cards, why they are where they are, why they show what they do. I'm not a rote memorization kind of guy, so a lot of resources just go card by card by card and tell you its meaning, and good luck to memorizing it. And if rote memorization works for you, I'm not saying that's wrong, but it doesn't work very well for me. I'm more of a big picture guy, so I like to see those overviews and see how everything fits in. I started studying tarot really seriously about 2 months ago, at the beginning of 2015. And I can't believe it's already 2015. Wow. And that was something I struggled with, was just putting the meanings of the cards together. And different resources would offer ways to connect them. Like, for example, showing me, like, I have the book 78 Degrees of Wisdom here by Rachel Pollack, which is a pretty famous tarot book that really does a pretty good job of giving an overview of the major arcana and how all the cards fit together there, but it doesn't do as well of a job of explaining the minor arcana, though it does give depth to the meanings of the cards. She's very good at that. And I found online resources that explain like what all the ones have in common, all the aces rather, what all the twos, all the threes, and also each element. And that's a way to infer the meanings of the cards. But why are they in my question is still there's more to it. It's not just there's a sense to the order that I haven't had explained. Like, why is this a 3 and not an 8? Why is it earlier rather than later? I think is more of what I'm going for here. And so that's what I want to do this series about, is to explain the insights and reasonings I have to show the bigger pictures that I see when I look at the cards, that I hope will help other people that are like me and don't do memorization or need big pictures, and maybe even offer those who are new and maybe who've been doing this for a while even some new insights into the tarot that I've come to, and hopefully will help at least one viewer out there. A little about me and my relationship with tarot. Like I said, I started studying tarot in depth about 2 months ago, but it actually started a few years ago when I bought Rachel's book and decided to really look into the tarot and what it meant. And I got to about the strength card, excuse me, and stopped. It was getting harder and harder for me to interrelate the cards, because Rachel does have, like, she subtly mentions how each card moves into the next and how it comes from the card before it. But sometimes that didn't jive with me very well. I didn't see the picture, and part of it was actually I still had a lot of growing up to do, and I've gone through experiences that I think are very well captured in some of the major arcana cards, and those have given me new insights, from my own experiences, bringing those to the tarot. But as I said, I had died off for a while. I did have a tarot deck back then, and I still have it. I'd actually gotten it even years before that in college. My friend gave me a tarot deck, but the meanings, it's based on the Waite system, but it doesn't use the Waite symbolism. And so Rachel, in her book, explains the cards a lot in terms of their symbolism and how the symbolism captures the meaning, and how therefore these are the meanings of the cards. Well, when you don't have that symbolism and you're trying to really look into it, this deck didn't work for me, and it doesn't work for me for other reasons too. Like I'll explain those later. But towards the end of last year, I was having some spiritual conversations with a friend, and tarot got brought up, and we messaged each other back and forth on Facebook a little bit for a while about it, and it kind of reignited that spark in me for interest, and I started reading the book again, and having sat with what I had learned for a few years, it kind of had settled in and hooked in my mind, so I could build off of it a little quicker this time around. And I ended up looking at tarot decks online. I found some tarot deck I wanted that spoke to my strengths. Like, I'm Wiccan, so a lot of the Christian or more Christian and Jewish mysticism aspects of the tarot or at least that the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is it doesn't work as well for me. I get what the meanings are, but I don't connect with a lot of the images, or I have negative opinions of some of those images. So I was glad to find a deck that spoke more to my Wiccan sensibilities. Unfortunately, it still keeps the whole air as swords and fire as wands, and in my own personal system, wands are tools of air for me, and swords are tools of fire. But the author actually explains that because she's kind of in my camp too, where she thinks the same way as me, but she says in the book she kept air with swords to be consistent. So if someone coming into tarot could use this deck, or a collector, they don't have to learn this entirely different scheme. And I understand that. It makes sense to me. And I know not every Wiccan is the same as me and has airy wands and fiery swords. Sometimes they switch them just like the tarot, so the tarot makes perfect sense for them. And good for you. That's great. But what do I want to say next? I want to talk first, before I dive into some of the insights and details that I have, kind of how I see tarot. Like I said, I don't do fortune telling. I think fortune telling is silly. I don't think you can predict the future, or just predict things so specifically. I don't think the future is set, and I think fortune telling it doesn't jive with me. For example, I notice it a lot with court cards, is that people will look at the physical appearances of the people on the cards and try to match them to people in their life with those physical experiences, or physical appearances. Excuse me. And no, just no. One, not every kind of person is represented on the cards. Like in the Waite-Smith deck, you're going to have all white people. So good luck with that. There are other skin tones. Shh, don't tell. But also, to me, the artwork is entirely symbolism. Each card has a theme, and not always a theme that can be described in one word or even two, or just a little phrase. There are deep themes that we can't always quite express. They're almost ineffable, but we have words to describe those themes. And the symbolism on the card speaks to all those words and the real depth of those themes. And so that's why I enjoy seeing different decks sometimes, is because I like to see how authors have maybe played down certain parts of the theme and played up others, or maybe switched the theme entirely, just to see how it fits in their schema. So what do I use? That's how I don't use tarot. How do I use it? Like I said, I see the parts of the tarot as each telling a story, and the cards capture themes in that part of the story. And what we do when we have a spread is to take those themes and make a new story out of them. And furthermore, either if we're reading for ourselves, we, or the querent, if we're reading for someone else, takes those themes and tries to find how they match to their own life, whether they do or don't. So what it does is it makes you reconsider your life. It gives you a new perspective on things. And when we have even cards that speak about the future, what you're doing is seeing what the theme of this whole story you've told, from, if you're doing like a past, present, future spread, what the focus was on the past, how it's affected you now, and how it might affect your future. You see an underlying theme, an underlying story. So the future, rather than say this is how it is consider the possibilities that may match that theme when you consider where you've come from. I'm not quite capturing what I feel about it. I'm having trouble finding the words, but I hope that makes sense. Is that I see it as making yourself think outside the box and maybe face some things you didn't want to consider, or you hadn't even considered before, or even giving you new insights on things you had considered, seeing them in a new perspective. Like if suddenly you see a card and you say, oh, that's my fear of I don't know, buying a new house or moving. Let's say moving. It's my fear of moving to a new city. But suddenly it's in terms of pentacles. So you're realizing maybe you may have been worried because you're leaving your friends, so it's more watery emotional connections. But now you've got all these pinnacles, and you're seeing it in terms of money. Maybe you hadn't considered money issues, or you had, but you felt very secure in them. But you had just kind of passively thought about, oh, I've got the money. Makes you think about it more in depth. That's how I see the tarot working, and that's not to say completely that every card, it doesn't offer spiritual insight into your life, because as much as I can't explain why it does, I have found that it very much does seem to throw cards in that you really need to hear. And I mean, I've always heard it said that the divine speaks to us through the random, and I think that's happening here. And I have no, for anyone watching this that's a complete tarot skeptic, I can't quell your fears there. But I think even if you're just interested, just to play with it, even if you don't, believe, and even if you don't believe in a spiritual side to life at all, if you're a complete atheist, full and deep, you can still get something out of this just because it offers new perspectives. It just, you think in new ways. But I have a spiritual component in it that I see, and that it's truly ineffable. I can't really convey what it does or why it does it, but I think it does work. Um, so now I want to get into some of the overview sort of insights I've had into the tarot as a whole, and I'm going to echo these themes when I look at things more individually as you go through, to kind of connect them, not only from the top down, the overview big picture angle that I like, but from the bottom up, especially for those of you that are watching this just to learn my insights and more about the tarot, that are more rote memorization, bottom up sort of people. So I'm trying to connect the two as best I can, and I hope it works out. One theme I notice that is truly, it is outright in the Major Arcana, and more subtly expressed in the Minor Arcana, is the idea of our inner world and our outer world, meaning the world of our experience and the self that does the experiencing. The self that is behind your thoughts, is behind your moods, your passions, your doing, your body. It's even, take the idea of the soul, really, that deeper self, and even if you're a skeptic and don't believe in soul, consider it the part of you that interacts, the mind, the psyche, and it talks about development there, whereas the Minor Arcana are more about our experiences in the world and how we develop, our self develops, our mind develops, our soul develops in terms of those experiences, and in terms of just understanding what it means to be in the world. That's really what I think the tarot captures in and of itself, what it means to be, which is no small proclamation. I mean, that's big, and that's why I think there are 78 cards, and I haven't thought about it too much in depth, but I could see there being decks with just hundreds and hundreds of cards to express all the aspects of human nature, and so maybe some seem to be left out here. I don't know. I haven't lived long enough or thought about it deep enough to see that, but what I can say is there's enough here to work with right now, as evidenced by everyone that does it, and to go back to the inner outer world aspect, the Minor Arcana is that outer world experience, and the Major Arcana is the inner world experience. But each in itself has an inner and outer world experience too. All the four suits of the Minor Arcana, the Major Arcana, it's on many different levels, and it speaks to that as above, so below nature of more pagan, magical. I'm just going to say pagan here, viewpoints of things reflected on multiple orders of reality, and that's freaking cool. But it's just such a good spiritual tool, and I never thought of it that way, because like I said, I'm Wiccan, and when I was so used to the four elements, I got them, they made sense, and I didn't get them completely, obviously. I have, you'll never get them all in one lifetime, and even, I'm 27, so even so far in my life, I haven't gotten them all. But what really clicked with me was actually the I don't even remember what brought on this insight. It had to do with the 4 elements and the pentacle to a Wiccan. So I'm going to use my Ace of Pentacles here because it has a big pentacle on it. So the pentacle, to many of pagan persuasion, but specifically to Wiccans, each point represents some aspect of reality. Spirit, air, fire, water, earth, or you may use a slightly different order there. Depends on your upbringing and how you conceive of the world. Remember, Wiccan's more orthopraxic, it's what you do, rather than orthodoxic, what you believe, Even though that seems strange, we kind of... It's interesting, but it's also irrelevant here. So, I never understood why the spirit part would be put on on equal playing field with the elements, and it's taken a few years to really get that. And it's the idea of this, the spirit, the transcendent, the divine permeates reality. And then if you consider, the pinnacle upside down, which often some people will say is matter over spirit, and this is spirit over matter, and I think those are both completely un-Wiccan, un-pagan views, because we see the natural world as good, as a product of the gods. The gods are in it and of it and outside of it and, for it, and lots of prepositions to it. But this, this reminds us of the spirit within, and this is the spirit without. So you still have that sense of inner world and outer world. But the relationship of the worldly things to the spirit, I like I said, I didn't get why they were all in the same symbol. And it was actually through the tarot that it kind of, hit me over the head, doy. The major arcana are about the spirit. They're about that, so-called 5th element, though I would not consider spirit an element, being as the 4 elements are elements. A lot of people say, the 4 elements make up spirit, but then spirit isn't an element, because that's what an element is. It's something that makes up something. I mean, spirit is a part of all of us, but I don't think it's an element in a different sense. It's the reason why there exists the world in the first place. Anywho, this is the so the major arcana then is the top of the pinnacle, the part that experiences reality, and the 4 suits are each major aspects of reality that have been developed and understood over thousands of years. And I really find this wonderfully. Not only does the tarot connect deeply with my own spirituality, it's giving me new insights to it, and I love it, because one thing I wanted to do was to use the minor arcana to explore the elements more, but I've found I'm really understanding the whole world more through this, and that's a wonderful thing. So that's kind of an overview of what I see. I want to give an overview now of this series. My first area I'll talk about is probably the minor arcana, because I have had some really good insights into why the minor arcana is laid out in the way it is, and how the court cards relate to it. You always read that the court cards are the hardest cards to learn the meanings of, and I completely agree with that. But it was because, they represent such different things. These almost seem to be situations, and then you have these people cards, that don't. How does that reflect it? How is that an experience of the self, even? And part of that is consider them, personality cards or attitude cards rather than people, and they make a little more sense. But the meanings given to them and why they were, one was one, or one, why all pages seem to be about new things. That seems strange. Like, isn't the ace about new things? So what is that there? I don't really get the thing. But through a happy circumstance, I laid out the cards based on some different things I had read, put the court cards beside them, and had a wonderful insight. And I'm going to share that with you in the next video, when I give an overview of the minor arcana before going a little more in depth in them. And just to note about that, the series is not going to explain every meaning of every card in depth, because again, I've only been doing this seriously for 2 months, and this is not Freaky Boy knows everything about the tarot, because Freaky Boy does not. Freaky Boy is still learning, and Freaky Boy will be sad if he ever knows everything about the tarot, even though that's his ultimate goal. That's kind of my ultimate goal in life. I love knowing things. I love knowing how things work and how they're put together. It just makes me happy. But if you know everything, life's really boring. So it's my theory that once you know everything, you die. But the other thing is, I've shown you 2 cards already, the Fool and the Ace of Pentacles. As I go through and talk about all the cards, because I do want to go through all 78 cards, I can't show you every card in this deck legally. I'm pretty sure that would be a copyright violation, being as the art is such an important part of these cards. Even though you probably can't get them at good enough quality just through this video to, you know, make your own set or anything like that. But hell, you could just use playing cards and add a few jokers for the extra court cards if you wanted to make your own. But so what I'm going to do is I actually have 2 tarot decks. Like I said, I have the tarot deck my friend gave me in college and the tarot deck I bought for myself last month. And I'll show you, I'll kind of go back and forth between the cards, except where I can want to point out specific things about a card, especially, or critique of a card, positive or negative, of course. I'll do that because I can show a card a little more specifically and explicitly if I'm commenting on it, critiquing it, reviewing it in some way. But just showing you the cards for purposes of going through this is, I think, a violation of copyright. And I respect these decks and the artists and the work that have gone into them. So I'm just taking the safe route here. So let me show you, let me tell you about each deck really quickly. So the deck I've been showing you so far is Witch's Tarot by Ellen Dugan with illustrations by Mark Evans. This is the book that comes with it. It actually comes with the deck. I don't know if you can buy them separately, which is kind of sad because I think one day I may buy a second copy of this deck because I really, really love it because it's so pagan themed and it does a wonderful job of getting rid of a lot of the Christian symbolism while also keeping some of it but changing the meaning, which gives, you know, a much more, you know, those bumper stickers that say coexist with all the different religious symbols. I used to have one of those and then I had a car accident and my bumper was ripped off. I know, I lost my bumper sticker. I was so sad. It reminds me of that. It's kind of that idea of coming together rather than being so divisive. And sometimes we need to get away, but you know, that's another topic entirely. The other deck, the one my friend gave me years ago, is the Light and Shadow Tarot. It's by Michael, I think it's Gepford. I could go for, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how to say that, but I think I'm going to say Gepford because that seems close enough. And Brian Williams. From my understanding, like I said, I didn't super job with this deck, so I haven't given it a ton of attention, is that Michael Gepford did the art. I know that. It says that right on the book, Block Prints by Michael Gepford. And I think some or all of the book is by Brian Williams. Excuse me. So here is the Ace of Swords. This is still in its box. I don't feel like taking them on. These cards are huge. Like, oh, I put my deck of cards up that I had. So let me just compare. I got some Post-its here, or sticky notes. Excuse me. They're not actually Post-it brand. Just compare. Yeah, these cards are freaking huge, and they're a bit too much for me. They're all black and white, as you can see. They're just block prints. The art is great. I love the art. Congrats to it. It's just that the symbolism, I think I said this, was different enough that I couldn't understand the cards, and it still doesn't super speak to me. And sometimes, I disagree with cards here and there, but overall, it's a great deck. If this speaks to you, it pulls in from a lot of different cultures, and which is wonderful to see. But I don't relate enough to those cultures for the symbolism to speak to me. So more of its question, and the art is very complex because this deck really plays with negative space. So in the parts that would be, let's say the black outlines things. Well, let me see if I can just find an example rather than sitting here trying to explain it in some abstract terms. If I can only think of a card that did it. There was a really good one I looked at the other day, and I don't remember what it is. Well, here, let me just show you one of my favorite cards. I think this is my absolute favorite from this entire deck, is the Magician. Just look at that. You have an upward arrow, a downward arrow, echoing the as above, so below-ish. You have all 4 tools, but you also have symbols of the elements, too. You see that child almost being birthed forth into from the magician's loins, even though the magician is typically a male principle. You still have that sense of creation. You have fish going over that I read the explanation for, but it didn't really make sense. He's got fish in his feet. These are they're representative of things, but they, like I said, they don't always speak to me. So, so sometimes I need a deck I can connect with more, and this isn't it. But like I said, I'm going to be showing you cards from both decks as we go through. I'm going to pretty much go back and forth unless I want to call a specific one out or show both, again, for copyright reasons. So, I hope you're excited for this series. I hope I've kind of piqued your interest through my discussion of the inner-outer themes and seeing that big picture of the cards. If you have a Rider-Waite based system, get your cards out too and play along with me. Oh, one more thing. My pronunciation, I know I say Arcana and not Arcana like a lot of people say, or Arcana. I mean, the word is based on the word arcane, so I like to say, the correct way. But you will probably also hear me say Arcana because that's the socially correct way, and that's how I've always heard it, And then you'll probably also hear me say Arcana, so, make a game out of it. Just write a tally for how many times I say each word and see which one wins in the end. I think it will be Arcana because I'm actually purposely trying to think that, but I don't know. We'll have a game while we learn. Just have fun with it. This isn't super serious tarot time. It's kind of goofy, and I'm probably going to make some bad jokes along the way because my jokes are generally terrible. Tarot time. So let's have a good old tarot time, shall we? Okay, I'll see you next video. Blessed be.